some stuff from the very beginning of the book. Nobody came to my 7th birthday party. There was a table laid with jellies and trifles, with a party hat beside each place, and a birthday cake with 7 candles on it in the centre of the table. The cake had a book drawn on it in icing. My mother, who had organised the party, told me that the lady at the bakery said they had never put a book on a birthday cake before. That mostly for boys, it was footballs or spaceships. I was their first book. When it became obvious that nobody was coming, my mother lit the 7 candles on the cake, and I blew them out. I ate a slice of the cake, as did my little sister and one of her friends, both of them attending the party as observers, not participants, before they fled, giggling, to the garden. Party games had been prepared by my mother, but because nobody was there, not even my sister, none of the party games were played, and I unwrapped the newspaper around the pass the parcel gift myself, revealing a blue plastic Batman figure. I was sad that nobody had come to my party, but happy that I had a Batman figure. And there was a birthday present waiting to be read, a box set, the Narnia books, which I took upstairs. I lay on the bed and lost myself in the stories. I liked that. Books were safer than people, anyway. My parents had also given me a Best of Gilbert and Sullivan LP to add to the 2 that I already had. I'd loved Gilbert and Sullivan since I was 3 when my father's youngest sister, my aunt, took me to see Iolanthe, a play filled with lords and fairies. I found the existence and nature of the fairies easier to understand than that of the lords. My aunt had died soon after, of pneumonia, in the hospital. That evening, my father arrived home from work, and he brought a cardboard box with him. In the cardboard box was a soft-haired black kitten of uncertain gender, whom I immediately named Fluffy, and which I loved utterly and wholeheartedly. Fluffy slept on my bed at night. I talked to it sometimes, when my little sister was not around, half expecting it to answer in a human tongue. It never did. I did not mind. The kitten was affectionate and interested, and a good companion for someone whose 7th birthday party had consisted of a table with iced biscuits and a blancmange and cake and 15 empty folding chairs. I do not remember ever asking any of the other children in my class at school why they had not come to my party. I did not need to ask them. They were not my friends, after all. They were just the people I went to school with. I made friends slowly when I made them. I had books, and now I have my kitten. We would be like Dick Whittington and his cat, I knew, or if Fluffy proved particularly intelligent, we would be the miller's son and Puss in Boots. The kitten slept on my pillow, and it even waited for me to come home from school, sitting on the driveway in front of my house by the fence, until a month later it was run over by the taxi that brought the opal miner to stay at my house. I was not there when it happened. I got home from school that day and my kitten was not waiting to meet me. In the kitchen was a tall, rangy man with tanned skin and a checked shirt. He was drinking coffee at the kitchen table. I could smell it. In those days, all coffee was instant coffee, a bitter, dark brown powder that came out of a jar. I'm afraid I had a little accident arriving here, he told me cheerfully. But not to worry. His accent was clipped, unfamiliar. It was the first South African accent I had heard. He, too, had a cardboard box on the table in front of him. The black kitten, was he yours? He asked. It's called Fluffy, I said. Yeah, like I said, accident coming here, not to worry, disposed of the corpse. Don't have to trouble yourself, dealt with the matter. Open the box. What? He pointed to the box. Open it, he said. The opal miner was a tall man. He wore jeans and checked shirts every time I saw him, except the last. He had a thick chain of pale gold around his neck. That was gone the last time I saw him too. I did not want to open his box. I wanted to go off on my own. I wanted to cry for my kitten, but I could not do that if anyone else was there and watching me. I wanted to mourn. I wanted to bury my friend at the bottom of the garden, past the green grass fairy ring, into the rhododendron bush cave, back past the heap of grass cuttings, where nobody ever went but me. The box moved. "Bought it for you," said the man. "Always pay my debts." I reached out, lifted the top flap of the box, wondering if this was a joke, if my kitten would be in there. Instead, a ginger face stared up at me, truculently. The opal miner took the cat out of the box. He was a huge, ginger-striped tomcat, missing half an ear. He glared at me angrily. This cat had not liked being put in a box. He was not used to boxes. I reached out to stroke his head, feeling unfaithful to the memory of my kitten, but he pulled back so I could not touch him, and he hissed at me and stalked off to a far corner of the room where he sat and looked and hated. "There you go, cat for a cat," said the opal miner, and he ruffled my hair with his leathery hand. Then he went out into the hall, leaving me in the kitchen with the cat that was not my kitten. The man put his head back through the door. "He's called Monster," I said. It felt like a bad joke. I propped open the kitchen door so the cat could get out. Then I went up to the bedroom and lay on the bed and cried for dead Fluffy. When my parents got home that evening, I do not think my kitten was even mentioned. Monster lived with us for a week or more. I put cat food in the bowl for him in the morning and again at night as I had for my kitten. He would sit by the back door until I or someone else let him out. We saw him in the garden, slipping from bush to bush or in trees or in the undergrowth. We could trace his movements by the dead blue tits and thrushes we would find in the garden, but we saw him rarely. I missed Fluffy. I knew you could not simply replace something alive, but I dared not grumble to my parents about it. They would have been baffled at my upset. After all, if my kitten had been killed, it had also been replaced. The damage had been made up. It all came back. And even as it came back, I knew it would not be for long. All the things I remembered, sitting on the green bench beside the little pond that Letty Hempstock had once convinced me was an ocean. After that, let's get with it.
Thank you, Kareem. How much of that is you at that age?
All of it. I mean, not necessarily all of it in terms of things happening in the way that they're described as happening, or things necessarily even happening at all. But, yeah, no, it's me. It was, and, you know, it was really kind of interesting for me, writing one of the me stories. And I'd done them at short length in the past. And, you know, one of the very first stories I ever wrote was called Violent Cases. And that's a story about a 3-year-old me analog who, after his dad dislocates his shoulder, is taken to Al Capone's osteopath. And in it, the Portsmouth of the early 1960s and the Chicago of the late 1920s starts to sort of blend and mix. And that was absolutely one of those stories. And again, in the mid-90s, I wrote for Mr. Punch. And that's filled with somebody who's not exactly me, but is more or less me, telling the story about being 8 or 9, and it's filled with my grandparents. Except, of course, it's not. I mean, it's this weird thing. I try and explain to people, where they say, well, so it's true. I go, no. Completely lies, except for the true bits. But it's the metaphor that I came up with in desperation, at one point trying to explain it to somebody, was I said, look, if you can imagine a mosaic picture, you know, when you get up close, you have a picture of something, say it's people sitting around eating, or flowers, or a beautiful forest. And when you get up really close, you can see it's a mosaic. It's in squares. The squares make it up. And there's green squares, and blue squares, and yellow squares, and red squares, and brown squares, and mauve squares, indigo squares, whatever indigo is. And all of the little red squares are true. But the red squares aren't the picture. They're just the red squares in the picture. So, it's me.